multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's Johnny Cash Friday. Welcome back to the program. We've got on the line Congressman Bruce Westerman. Congressman Westerman, how are you this morning?
Doing well, Paul. Good to be with you again on Johnny Cash Friday. I could just listen to your music, and your listeners might like that better too.
No, I sometimes I feel the same way. I'm just like, we got to get to the news now, and I feel like they kind of feel that way. So what's going on with you, Congressman Westerman? How's Washington D.C.? Are you in D.C. now, or are you back home?
No, I'm back in Arkansas, and I'm actually traveling the 4th District right now, so I hope we don't lose you as we're going down the road.
No, I understand.
But,
yeah.
Be up in up on the Mulberry River later this afternoon for a ceremony up there to recognize the 50 years of the National Wild and Scenic River Act, and getting out and visiting with constituents today.
Well, that's good. Can we talk just a little bit? I mean, I feel like one of the biggest things, it was about several weeks ago, but it was a little bit ago, but it was the omnibus vote. So talk a little bit about the omnibus vote. How did you vote on that bill?
Well, I voted against it, Paul, and it's not because there weren't some good things in the bill. There were some really good things in the bill. Some stuff with the military, some issues related to management on our national forest that I've literally worked on since I've been in Congress. So, it wasn't everything I've worked on, but a lot of the work that I've done for the past 3 years, some major components of that got shoved into that omnibus bill. But the bottom line is it will increase the deficit $1 trillion. It was a 2,300-page bill that had you been able to read continuous, you'd had to read 132 pages per hour from the time it was filed to the time to vote on it to even read through it, much less read through it where you could comprehend it and understand what's in it. And it just was loaded up with pork and wants from Democratic senators who held out to the very end to get what they wanted in this bill. So I can't vote for something like that. I don't think that's what the voters of the 4th District of Arkansas expect from me. And I don't know how to change the process other than opposing it and working hard to do something different. But a lot of times it comes down to the 60-vote rule in the Senate, because we had already passed all 12 appropriation bills in the House. Last September they were sitting in the Senate, and that's how the government should be funded, but they never took a single one of those bills up for a vote. We got into these continuing resolutions. Mm-hmm. The government shutdowns that were supposedly going to happen. I guess it did happen for over a weekend. And then you get another crisis situation, and this mother lode of all bills comes across that's not just the spending bills to get us through the end of this year, but it's got all kinds of policy and law changes in it. So I don't think that's how our founders intended for our country to function, and I'm just not going to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, and, it was a fiscal nightmare, and it did add a lot to the debt. And like you said, it did do some good things. But, yeah, I can totally understand that vote, because at some point, no one even talks about the debt anymore. It used to be something that people on the right talked about. They were concerned about. It doesn't seem to be the case anymore. What are your thoughts on that?
I appreciate you talking about it and reporting on it. It's not that people aren't talking about it. It's just that it doesn't get the headlines in the news. It's not, it's not Russia or what the latest thing is that the mainstream media wants to report about. But I can promise you I'm still talking about it. I've got a lot of colleagues that are talking about it. And I've got a piece of legislation that I'm working on that it's similar to something I sponsored in the state legislature. It was to cap the growth rate in spending. And I serve on the budget committee, and we had a revised baseline that was put out by CBO a couple of weeks ago.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. This is Conduit News Radio. Good morning to everybody out there. So glad that you're with us. We're building a liberty machine here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. And if you want to be a part of it, you can give us a call or a text. The number 870-275-9799. Those of you that can see that on your screen, you're probably over at facebook.com/Conduit News watching the program, and you can sound off on the Facebook feed if you'd rather do that. My goodness, in the John Woods public corruption trial, we now have seen the government's case. They plan on, I guess, ending their case or resting their case. The government does today, according to Doug Thompson's piece in the Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Now, what we have found is essentially I guess, a concrete link at this point to John Woods and the Preferred Family Healthcare Company out in Missouri, up in Missouri. Of course, that's where Rusty Cranford is kind of the link there. Also, former state representative Eddie Cooper, he's also linked to this as well. But we found out that essentially there was emails disclosed, the government disclosed emails that essentially revealed another potential scheme. A $4.7 million bid that had to do with benefiting Preferred Family Health Care, Tom Goss, Bontia Goss, these names that sound familiar because they are, being basically implicated, as Preferred Family Health Care when it comes to the guy who was getting kickbacks in New Jersey, Rusty Cranford getting kickbacks in Arkansas. Of course, Rusty Cranford then, according to reports, and the FBI claims they've got videotape or a recording of him trying to solicit somebody in a murder for hire plot to murder the witness from New Jersey who took a plea back in December. And this just goes on and on and on. I am pretty amazed, though. There's a lot of context here that we've got to get into, specifically this $4.7 million bid trying to get taxpayer dollars. John Wood's defense is essentially saying, well, it would have created all these jobs, and that's what set off an alarm bell with me. When I heard the defense, according to Doug Thompson, the report is that, this $4.7 million bid for a company, a thermostat company, that Tom and Bontia Goss were owners in, this Preferred Family Healthcare. You see the link, and we're going to try to move them to Arkansas or give them taxpayer benefits. And then the defense says, but it would have created all these jobs if it would have gone down. I'm thinking, didn't John Woods, wasn't he the sponsor of the issue that was on the ballot that removed the cap in super project bonds and everything else, the amount of money, and what was that? That was about jobs, and it was his bill that put that on the ballot, that essentially removed the cap of how much Arkansas can go into debt when it comes to bonds. And I'm thinking there's a huge connection here because it involves the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, and all this came out in court yesterday. This thing is way deeper, and when you start bringing in the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, by the way, that jobs amendment was totally endorsed, and it wasn't about jobs, by the way, it was about debt, but it was totally endorsed and carefully crafted by Governor Asa Hutchinson, who cut ads for the Arkansas Economic Development Commission that played all across the state telling you to vote for that particular issue on the ballot back in 2016. Oh, my goodness. All right, so let's get into this article, shall we? The headline here, Doug Thompson $4.7 million bid aired at kickback trial. Now, if you didn't follow all I just said, I understand. I'm all over the place because I'm connecting a lot of dots. I can kind of see this thing from a broader perspective, like in my mind, and so there's a lot of details. I can see the dots. I'm connecting them, but the connections are the details that I'm probably leaving out. So let's just try to go through this a step at a time, okay? Doug, one piece at a time. Doug Thompson reports that a $400,000 grant awarded with kickbacks was only the start of a Missouri company's plan to get another $4.7 million from the state. John Woods sought a $4.7 million state grant forgivable loans and other financing to move a Springfield, Missouri-based thermostat company or a thermostat manufacturer to Northwest Arkansas. And again, when this was brought up in trial, the defense says, but it would have created jobs. So this is, just so you know, the reason Tom and Bontia Goss are being looked at with Preferred Family Healthcare is because Preferred Family Healthcare is accused of taking taxpayer money because they're a nonprofit, taking taxpayer money and then using it to pay lobbyists to lobby for more money or pay politicians to give them more money. That's essentially what this whole FBI investigation in Missouri and the trial that's going on. Rusty Cranford's going to trial in June. That's what this is about. The New Jersey guy, it's about using taxpayer dollars from that a nonprofit is due. This is not a nonprofit. This thermostat company is a for-profit company, right? And that for-profit company had 2 board members who are also executives or were also executives in the nonprofit Preferred Family Healthcare. Doug Thompson writes that nonprofit hired Woods' fiancée for $70,000 a year 4 months after receiving the $400,000 grant. Now, they had emails yesterday in court because I was talking with Josh Waters yesterday, and the emails detailed the conversations about we've got to come up with a title for John Woods' fiancée. What are we going to call that job? Because if we're going to pay her $70,000, what are we going to call her? Now, when John Woods' fiancée left this position, I'm told they filled it by paying somebody $16 an hour. So what does that tell you? $70,000. They did this 4 months after they got the $400,000. Now that, ladies and gentlemen, is, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. All right, so let's keep going through this. The defense countered that the thermostat company's move from Missouri would have provided at least 150 jobs to the region with the potential of more. Jobs, jobs, jobs. It's okay because we're talking about taxpayer money, but we promise in the next 10,000 years there'll be 150 jobs created. We promise. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Does that sound familiar at all when the governor or whoever else gets up and has a press conference about how we're going to give taxpayer money away to this Chinese company and they're going to come and revitalize the factory? They're going to, quote, create jobs, end quote. And they're going to create 200 jobs, 300 jobs, right? Of course, we've detailed that they really just siphon existing skilled labor from other factories and they can pay them more because they're being taxpayer subsidized. And they're actually hurting existing Arkansas businesses, just one big game of old maid. We've established that many times. Doug Thompson, Tuesday's testimony referred to Woods' dealings with AmeriWorks, okay? That, again, is the Preferred Family Healthcare connection. The new thing is we have this thermostat company, though, okay? It mentions Rusty Cranford. It says Rusty Cranford accepted the AmeriWorks grant September 26th, incorporated the nonprofit September 27th, and deposited the $400,000 check September 30th. Then, of course, when they got pinched, he sent the money back, and John Woods and Mike and Neil then tried to give the money to Ecclesia because I guess they thought everything was fine, which is weird. Senator is taken care of. Let's see. Listen to this. Dayspring and Decision Point's parent company, Preferred Family Healthcare, is based in Springfield. Emails subpoenaed by the government show Tom Goss, the chief financial officer, told Rusty Cranford on October 15th, 2013, he wanted to hire Woods' fiancée, Christina Mitchell, at a salary of $90,000 a year, but in discussions they noted no position outside of the parent company paid so much. Quote, Senator is taken care of, end quote, Goss said during the email exchange. change. He is a new Bubba for our team. Quote, he is a new Bubba for our team. I don't know. Is that a Bill Clinton reference? Okay, let's see here. Headquarter emails also show the original draft of MayorWorks. It was not filled out by Cranford. The grant records show it was filled out by Bontia Goss. Bontia Goss was the chief operating officer for Preferred Family Healthcare. Let's look into this thermostat company, though. A private, for-profit thermostat manufacturer and importer based in Missouri. They wanted $4.7 million of your taxpayer money, or it says forgivable loans, which I don't know if I've ever actually heard that term associated with this Arkansas economic development scheme that politicians love to take credit for in the press conference and take the positive publicity, but then 5-6 years later, there's very little follow-up when the jobs are a disappointment or they don't materialize like they were told they were going to. But listen to this. They wanted forgivable loans from this is the kicker, Arkansas Economic Development Commission. Cranford and company representatives met with Grant Tennille, then director of the Development Commission, and local chamber officials in Northwest Arkansas on September 27th, 2013. Okay, keep notes of this because these are the players. You have the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, okay? You have the director. At the time was Grant Tennille. Now it's Mike Preston, but I'm just telling you that things are different back then. You have the governor, okay? At the time, BB, all right? Now our governor is Asa. All right, so you got 1, 2, 3, but here's the fourth. Here's the kicker. You ready for this? Chamber of Commerce. All right. Okay, here we go. This is going to be relevant later. Here in a minute, I'm going to back up and we're going to go look at a flashback article, but just hold on for a second, okay? So, where did I leave off there? Where did I leave off, Joe? Springfield Company, $4.7 million. I was talking about. Yeah, okay. Among the benefits sought was a grant. Doug Thompson reporting of $1 million and no interest, 5-year loan of $3 million that would be reduced by $20,000 for each job created using workers trained by AmeriWorks, court documents showed. If projections of 150 employees were met, the loan would have been entirely forgiven. Woods spearheaded efforts to get support, with him approaching members of the Senate. Then State Representative Mike Neal would lobby in the House. Both would appeal to then-Governor Mike Beebe. Woods said in an email to Goss, Cranford, and Neal, dated October 19th of 2013, the governor would have final say on the Development Commission grants. If he refused, Woods and Neal would take up the issue in the February 2014 fiscal session of the legislature, Woods' email says. Okay, so we have that basically the governor was going to decide whether or not this was going to be a deal or not. Now, in the cross-examination, you have Patrick Benka. That's Woods' defense attorney. He said that Pro One is not the name of a golf ball. Pro One is the name of the thermostat company. That Pro One could have created as many as 200 jobs in Northwest Arkansas. Again, that's their defense. But it could have created jobs. Folks, these arguments are familiar if you have any sort of political memory here in Arkansas. Okay? This is a big deal. All right? Let's go to the flashback article. Arkansas Business. Well, I just had it pulled up. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Here we go. Arkansas Business flashback article by Mark Friedman. Okay, this is August 22nd of 2016, and I just did a real quick Google search this morning. So let me go find what issue 3 was. Not the first issue 3 that extended term limits. There was another issue 3. Okay, a job luring amendment, or is it corporate welfare? What a great question Mark Friedman was asking his headline back in August 22nd of 2016, right? And you see who's this on the bottom right on this? That's John Woods, the bottom right corner right there on your screen. All right. If Arkansas voters approve an amendment to the state constitution in November, supporter state will help bring more companies and jobs to the state. Opponents of the Economic Development Amendment, Issue 3 on November 8th, general election ballot, say it's corporate welfare, and even supporters acknowledge the potential for unintended consequences that could put the state or local communities in a financial bind. Issue 3 is one of 3 constitutional amendments that the General Assembly referred out to voter approval. It removed the cap on state-issued bonds for economic super projects, which is currently 5% of the state's revenue, which was a check on government and what they could do to the people. It allowed communities to borrow money for economic development through voter-approved bonds, which is going to be a disaster for local communities immediately because they're going to gamble wrong. They're going to lose their bets. And allowing cities to pay chambers of commerce for economic development services. There we go. There's the Chamber of Commerce. So who supported this amendment? John Woods, because it was his brainchild, thought it was a good idea. The Arkansas Economic Development Commission thought it was a good idea. Asa Hutchinson thought it was a good idea. And last but not least, the Chamber of Commerce. Did I already mention the Chamber? You have the Chamber, you have Asa, you have John Woods, you have the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. Does anybody see familiar themes here? And I know there's nothing legally wrong with guilt by association. I get that. I'm just trying to expose to you how they think of your money. They think it's their money. Your money is their money. And they think they can do whatever they want to with it. And it ends up lending itself to this absolute, system that breeds corruption, and it breeds this concept where we, the people, are actually being left out of the discussion because you're not going to get, you're a local mom and pop business, you're not getting an Arkansas Economic Development loan. No. The Chinese are going to get that because it's for our good somehow it's for our good. Unbelievable. Listen to what they say here. Again, this flashback. Sorry, I'm excited. Supporters say the provisions will give economic developers the tools they need to attract or retain businesses in Arkansas. But State Representative Nate Bell, an independent who represents Polk County, part of Montgomery County, says that by removing the limits, Arkansas could find itself holding some bad debt. And Nate Bell there, even though he wants to attack Conn whatever chance he gets, he actually is right in this flashback article from 2016. Listen, keep going down. I know we got to go to break. State Senator John Woods, Republican Springdale, who was a sponsor of the amendment, said he's not for giving the economic packages to billion-dollar companies, but each decision would have to be made on a case-by-case basis. I guess that should read, but each decision point would have to be made on a case-by-case basis, right? Decision point, right? That's what it used to be called before preferred family health care got involved, right? This is, unbelievable. The schemes that were going on here, the schemes are absolutely, they're just being laid bare. And again, what are we seeing from it? We are seeing a deliberate lack of account. Built into this system is a deliberate lack of account, ladies and gentlemen. It's built in. And it doesn't come out unless you have somebody who's so reckless and so careless that they actually get charged with a crime. And now they're in federal court. We have to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News. We'll be back in just a moment.
This is Mother Government. My people, the promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are 2 matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Actually, we found out, in light of the fact that John Woods faces 15 counts of fraud, all relating to either wire or mail fraud, money transfers, trying to get rich off the taxpayer. Essentially what this is thievery. We also find out that he had a scheme planned to take and give $4.7 million after he had already given $400,000 to a Tom and Bontia Goss-owned thermostat company called Pro One. Of course, it would have been given by the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, and it was all about jobs. The defense's answer was, well, it's about it would have created jobs, and I'm telling you, I'm just connecting the dots here between that and the terrible and poorly written and deceptively written issue where they called it the Jobs Amendment, but it was really about debt. It was about giving the Chamber of Commerce the ability to get around a court decision that had limited them from getting taxpayer money. And, of course, remember when Asa Hutchinson, again, he went out and cut ads for this terrible amendment. Listen to this.
Elections are often confusing,
Back
and
in
this year is no
2016.
different, except with issue number 3, the Jobs Amendment. Everyone agrees we need more higher-paying jobs. Voting for issue 3 will allow your community to fund
We have a lag or something. Anyway, you
efforts to attract new business and industry, creating those higher-paying careers right in your area, and it will help us compete against our neighboring states. Make your vote count by voting for those good jobs. Vote yes for jobs. Vote for issue 3.
Okay, yeah, this is a flashback. We're doing a lot of flashbacks here. If you look at the Arkansas Business Army, I'm telling you, you got the same players involved here, the same forces. It's the same system. You know what I mean? It's the same system. And I got a text message here. Somebody says $31,000 per job. Is that what we're basically talking about in taxpayer monies, depending on a situation-by-situation basis? Yeah. Anyway, unbelievable. This is a big story. We'll continue to figure it out. I'm interested to talk to Josh Waters later today, and not during the show. I just mean, later today we'll be talking with Josh. I'll be talking with Josh Waters and getting his take on all of this. Maybe we'll get an update from him tomorrow on the program. Folks, when we come back, we'll be talking with Mr. Tim Loggins, Patriots of Act 746. Again, big news disclosed in court yesterday. $4.7 million bid was aired in the kickback trial. We now know that John Woods sought to give loans to this Missouri company that's in trouble that involve Rusty Cranford. It's kind of connecting all of the dots. Who else might this ensnare? Are there more shoes to drop? We'll just got to wait and see.
They've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So I sat through the hearing on that, and I studied the report, and they're projecting over the next 10 years we're going to spend $12 trillion that we don't have. So we're going to take our $21 trillion debt and add another 12 to that in 10 years. But if you look at what CBO calls the baseline, they're increasing the baseline nearly 6% per year every year. And if you reduce that baseline, CBO calls that a cut. That's how messed up Washington, D.C. is. But if we would simply hold the baseline to 2% or 2.5%, we could balance the budget in 8 years, even with everything that's going on now. If we would do that, so I'm working on legislation to put language around a proposal like that, and that's the kind of stuff we're going to have to do if we ever want to change the trajectory that we're on. But we can't just sit here and say that we've got an economy that's growing great. They're saying now 3.3% for the GDP, but we're still going to grow spending at the baseline level at nearly 6% per year. The math doesn't work when you're already $21 trillion in debt and you're spending at a rate twice as fast as the economy's growing in the federal government. So, and I would even be willing to say this, that from the purpose of the Budget Committee is to put a ceiling for expenditures and a floor for revenue. So that gives instruction to the rest of the House on how to write tax bills and how to write spending bills and how to write policy that makes those things happen. I would be willing to say that let's tag the growth in spending to the growth rate of the economy and say that the spending can't grow at a faster rate of the economy. And I would be willing to also say that taxes have to increase at the same rate as the economy, because you know what? They're already we collect more revenue than at a rate faster than what the economy is growing, and that's even with the tax cut, and that's in the CBO baseline. So the problem is not having enough revenue. The problem is spending too much money, and I guess I'm going to keep saying that until my head hurts, but until we address that fundamental issue, we're never going to change the deficit spending and the debt that we have in this country. And it is a serious problem.
Yes, it is.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back. I want to really appreciate the great folks of Patriots of X746 and everything they do, sharing our stuff online. And this particular portion of the program is brought to you by Patriots of X746. So if you want to know more about them, first of all, you got to go to Facebook and you got to search for Patriots of Act 746. They're on a mission to educate you about your Second Amendment rights, specifically here in Arkansas. If you want a grassroots local group that knows what your rights are in the state of Arkansas when it comes to carrying a weapon, when it comes to the concept of constitutional carry, and what that really means. I'm not talking about the bogus definition that the governor says to try to protect the budget of the Arkansas State Police. I'm talking about the actual definition of constitutional carry. Then you've got to check it out. Act 746, it's a closed group. You'll have to request to be a member. I'm told every time we mention it on this program, they see their numbers increase that very day, if not in the next couple of days, because it's very much a viral sensation. We're proud to tell you about them. Here to talk more about the Patriots of Act 746, we have Mr. Tim Loggins is with us. Tim, thanks for coming on, sir.
Good morning, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing good this morning. How are you doing? What's been going on with you?
I am blessed, Paul. God has treated me better than I deserve. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way. All right, well, I want to talk to you about some Second Amendment issues, specifically with legislators and what they think of Act 746. But before I get to that, Tim, I was just wondering. Actually, I already know the answer. I saw a Facebook post that you made about this kind of growing controversy with Senator Jason Rapert and what he said about Jan Morgan, the Republican gubernatorial candidate challenging Asa, called her a Jezebel and said she basically had the spirit of Jezebel. And a lot of people are upset with those comments. What were your thoughts? What was your reaction to those comments?
Well, I found it insulting because he implied, I don't know if he implied, he said that the males in this state that were supporting Jan were doing so based upon her looks, and that she was some type of spirit that was, enchanting us with her looks. I found that something straight out of the 1950s. And found it insulting, but also I appreciated it in that, you know what, that might be the best friend Jan's got, because it's really been polarizing. Mm-hmm. And it's brought her a lot of attention, and justly so.
Yeah, it certainly has. There's just been more, I think, because of Senator Rapert saying what he said, there are actually more people that know that Jan Morgan is running than did before, and they're thinking, hang on, wait a second. And the fact, and it is insulting to men to say that this is, you're only supporting somebody because of their looks, because honestly, if you look at the policies that she's standing for, which is shrinking the size of government by getting spending under control, tax cuts that mean less money going to the government than is currently going to the government now. I think that's what's resonating with folks, especially when they understand that what we have now is the opposite of those things I just mentioned.
You're exactly right, Paul. I hated to see it because Senator Rapert has done some good legislation in the past, but he managed in one little Facebook post to insult every voter in Arkansas, men, women. He insulted folks that weren't even involved in the race, and now they're getting involved in looking up Jan Morgan and seeing where she stands at. So, more so than probably any other friend of the governor, he has polarized folks and brought attention to the race. And actually, I think that's what Jan needed. So, Senator Rapert, we appreciate your efforts.
Yeah, well, and this was what was so interesting about it. This was just a couple. This all started last week or so when there was some supporters of Senator Rapert or friends of Senator Rapert on Facebook that said they were voting for Jan Morgan. I think a pastor did this, and they were encouraging their friends to do the same thing. And Senator Rapert responded and started to defend Asa and called Jan Morgan a liar, which is not, still have no facts as to what she's lied about. Of course, the next week it makes I said this jokingly yesterday. Well, so logically, if you call someone a liar the first week, it makes sense the next week to step up your game and call her the spirit of Jezebel. That's obviously a logical progression there. But what I think this really was is Senator Rapert, and there are other people doing this across the state. They are rushing to try to defend Asa Hutchinson, and they're trying to whitewash his record. Which is a liberal record on economic issues and tax policy, and even on social issues, even on the low-hanging fruit issues we're supposed to agree on when you come to the bathroom issue or the Religious Freedom Restoration Act issue, and how we abandoned all the people of Arkansas just because Walmart made a phone call. And it was just, people remember this stuff. And then you look at him not signing the anti-Sharia law bill because he opposed it. And everything else, and it just, when you know that record, you can defend it by going to the people and saying, well, yes, I did those things. Let me tell you why I thought that was the best move forward. We're not getting that from the other side of the Republican Party. What we're getting from the other side of the Republican Party is, no, you're wrong and you're lying. And that's frustrating. And now you have, and that's, I think, why, because they're doing these mental gymnastics to try to still support Asa, call themselves a conservative, call him a conservative. That's why then you reach down and you say, spirit of Jezebel, because you're just grasping at straws at this point. Well, it didn't work when I called her a liar. Maybe it'll work if I use a biblical reference. That's kind of my feeling. What do you think, Tim?
And I agree with that. And again, he managed to insult every voter in Arkansas. He insulted women. He insulted men. He insulted Christians. He insulted atheists. He gave ammunition to every segment of Arkansas society with just a few comments. And I really resent his sanctimonious comments because, on that same post, he claimed that he is a ardent supporter of the Second Amendment. He called himself a purist, I believe he said. And, he supported that enhanced bill. He voted for it. And he said he never votes for an infringement, but he voted for the enhanced carry bill.
Mm-hmm.
So, he can't be truthful in that, but then he's going to question someone else's integrity with biblical quotes. And I think it was over the line, but honestly, I appreciate it because it's got the conversation going.
Yeah, it has. Let's talk about the enhanced carry just real quick. Do you have any updates on that? I mean, are the state police still ignoring, the bad parts of the law, hoping that it'll get fixed next year?
Yes, they are. And that conversation came up at our meeting this past Sunday with our representatives and Senator Johnson. There's a lot of talk about what we're going to do with it moving forward, and probably the best thing we can do is scrap it, just repeal it and start over and go back to that original idea of a campus carry bill. Mm-hmm. And I think that's gaining some momentum in the legislature. But, yeah, the state police are still ignoring, the requirements on instructors and following the parts of the law that they think is important, which is just unconscionable.
So you guys had a meeting in the Northeast Arkansas chapter of Patriots of Act 746, and I understand you had great folks there like State Representative Dan Sullivan. And who else was there, by the way?
Well, Dan Sullivan is he's attended every meeting we've had in the Northeast Arkansas chapter. Dan is a great supporter of gun rights in Arkansas. This time we had Representative Joe Jett from District 56. We had Representative Jimmy Gazaway from District 57. And we had Senator Blake Johnson from District 20. And we met in Paragould. So they were all close to their district.
Okay, good. So did you guys, was it more like of an educational outreach? Were you guys talking about Act 746 and constitutional carry? What did you guys discuss?
Well, Paul, one of the things I've been doing for the Northeast Arkansas chapter is reaching out to politicians, elected officials in Northeast Arkansas, getting their position on our gun rights on Act 746 and, the Arkansas State Constitution, and sharing that with our members. And we meet in different spots in Northeast Arkansas every month, and I invited these guys because, number one, it's their districts and allowed them the opportunity to share their stance with their constituents.
So what were their stances? I'm curious. Like what was you mentioned Representative Gazaway was there, Joe Jett was there, Senator Blake Johnson. So what were their stances when it comes to trying to uphold current Arkansas law as is, or continue to educate people about constitutional carry in Arkansas?
Well, I found it interesting, Paul, whenever you talk about the governor's statement about we're constitutional carry, but that's not inconsistent with the requirement for a permit, which is a garbage opinion. That's a waffle.
Bogus, yeah.
Every rep and senator there agreed that current law makes Arkansas constitutional carry, no permit required. Now, there were some different opinions on where they felt, we needed to be versus where we're at. Senator Blake Johnson favors permits for several reasons. One, he says for reciprocity and, not having to wait whenever you purchase a firearm, but also because he says that, a permit allows the state to know that it's a good guy carrying a gun and not a bad gun. And 746 disagrees with that position. But, Senator Johnson had the courage to come out and state it to a 746 meeting, so I applaud that. He was the only one that felt that way, though, by the way. Representative Gazaway he quoted the Constitution and said he would, not support any infringement, and he felt like permits were an infringement. Representative Joe Jett, he agreed with that, and he actually went as far as to say, that if 746 wasn't, Act 746 Patriots weren't in favor of legislation moving forward, that he would consult us and wouldn't support any legislation that wasn't supported by us.
Wow, that's great. That shows you, Representative Joe Jett, now a Republican, but not too long ago was a Democrat. He switched over to maintain his committee chairmanship, which is not necessarily the best reason, but it just kind of shows you on the Second Amendment, it's always a strong issue. It resonates with a lot of people across a broad political spectrum.
Well, the voters of Arkansas, especially here in Northeast Arkansas, Paul, we believe in our gun rights. We believe in the Second Amendment. We believe in Article 2, Section 5 of the state constitution. And, that's how we grew up. That's our culture. And I believe that our elected officials recognize that. Yeah. And for the most part, they believe that. Mm-hmm. And what 746 does is allow us to have a voice that we as individuals couldn't have. I'm sure that if Tim Loggins called, Representative Jed or Senator Blake Johnson and said, hey, come meet with me, that would be a no. Uh-huh. But when I say, hey, we're going to have 30 guys, 30 of your constituents, would you like to come address us and our concerns? Well, we got a voice now.
Yeah.
And not only are we educating on what the law is, but we're able to reach out to elected officials and get some response from them.
Should there be an effort to, I don't know, just kind of change, because when you mentioned Senator Blake Johnson and said, he had the courage to come out and say, no, he thinks that, there should be a permit process for reciprocity. I mean, that's why I still have my concealed carry license, because I do travel outside of the state sometimes, and I'd like to have the ability to carry in other states that are reciprocal. So, I mean, should there maybe potentially, an idea would be to, instead of call it the concealed carry license, in Arkansas, maybe just kind of rebrand it and say, no, this is your reciprocity license. Like when we finally get the word out that this is that your rights are what they are when you're in our borders, and you don't have to have a permission slip from the government, you don't have to buy your right back from the government. But there could still be because of what other states do and other governments, there could still be a reason to have one of these licenses so you can travel outside of Arkansas.
And I agree with that completely, Paul, and that's not inconsistent with constitutional carry, by the way. The governor got his reasoning wrong, but the idea that we will have a permitting scheme for reciprocity is not inconsistent with constitutional carry. We just need to be honest about it.
Yes.
I believe we have 12 states that are constitutional carry in the United States. It's 12 or 13, and all but one of them have a permitting process. And it's for reciprocity purposes when you're traveling outside of your state. Now, with that said, it's much cheaper in these states than what Arkansas is. Arizona is one that we recommend to get a non-resident permit. They're $60.
Wow.
Texas, for their permitting scheme, is $40. And Arkansas is $141 and some change plus your training class. Mm-hmm. So, we need to quit funding the state police, fund them legitimately through the general revenue, and reduce this so that, we're not disadvantaging economically strapped folks that can't afford a permit to defend themselves. Mm-hmm. Number one, you don't need a permit to carry open or concealed. We need to say that. Our elected officials need to say that. And number two, we need to make it affordable. So, if I'm traveling out of state, I need my permit, because if I'm going to, Florida, how many states am I passing through? And I need a right to defend myself, and the permit allows that. But we need to say, first and foremost, Arkansas is constitutional carry. You don't need a permit in Arkansas. And let's make it affordable, $20, $30. That would be reasonable, maybe.
Yeah. And then then the reasoning's different. The reasoning isn't the state of Arkansas, infringing on your right while you're under the authority and the government of the state of Arkansas. But if you do want to travel outside, we'll give you this permit, take this class or whatever. Or maybe you don't even, I don't know what the new system would be, but you give people the reciprocity to carry across state lines. I think that makes sense. But you got to have, like you said, a mentality shift. So I think that would be good. The whole philosophy, though, of needing a permission slip in order to carry, because this argument that you mentioned from Senator Johnson, because the police will know who's a good guy with a gun versus who's a bad guy with a gun because they've checked in with the government first. First of all, that's not necessarily true. I mean, I know statistically, with concealed carry, law-abiding gun owners are law-abiding, but that's still not necessarily true. Just because you get a concealed carry permit doesn't mean that you're never going to commit a crime and that you're a good guy necessarily,
And I agree with that statement, Paul. And here's the bottom line: if the states can sell you your right, and they can grant it or not, then it's not a right; it's a privilege. And that's the real mistake in this entire idea. It's an inalienable right to be able to keep and bear arms. That's codified in the Constitution. It's codified in the Arkansas State Constitution. And it's not a privilege, it's a right. Mm-hmm. So the idea that I have to go seek permission is an infringement in and of itself. We need to go ahead and just recognize, hey, we're a constitutional carry state. We have a right to keep and bear arms. And you know what? I'm not a bad guy just because the state hasn't granted me permission. That's apples and oranges.
That's the point right there. You're not a bad guy just because you don't have the permission slip. Tim Loggins, I appreciate you, sir, from Patriots Vac 746. Thanks for coming on. It's always a pleasure, and look forward to doing it again sometime.
Paul, I do want to mention one thing before we go, if I've got a minute.
Absolutely.
You know, I've reached out to all the elected folks in Northeast Arkansas, and every one of them has responded to me, and that's from mayors to, you know, sheriffs, representatives, and senators. I have one politician in Northeast Arkansas that hasn't responded to Patriots Vac 746, refuses to give a statement on his stance on 746, and that is Representative James Sturch. He refuses to answer his stance.
Really?
And I've contacted him, I've called him, I've messaged him, I've, you know, told him what I'm trying to do, and he just won't respond. And I don't know what his stance is.
Oh, wow.
And I find that unconscionable. If your elected officials won't respond to you, the constituents, that we really need to examine that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree. And that's kind of consistent with kind of his MO from what I can tell. Anyway, and State Representative James Sturch, he's welcome on this program anytime, and you know he can explain why he walked out on special election reform. I'd love to know that. All right, Tim, I appreciate it. Maybe he heard you say that, and he'll get in touch with you. Who knows? Tim Loggins, I appreciate it, sir.
Who knows, Paul?
Okay.
Thank you, Paul.
Folks, we got to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Money, power, prestige, essence. Available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From Zenata Rhino Collection. The fragrance of backroom deals. Nepotism the aroma of higher taxes. Subliminal deception. Deep state. Ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yes, determined, definitely determined. You know, as John Wood's thing is kind of commenced here, and I have been sent this twice now, but as we look into the John Wood's public corruption trial, you also got to look into this this consulting firm of his. Let's see here. Let's see. John Woods Incorporated, Titan Consulting. You're going to Titan Consulting, limited liability company. This was, when was this put into place? I mean, it was around the same time that virtually everybody knew. 2016 was the date filed. September 2016. This is when many people knew that John Woods was under some sort of investigation. I mean, they'll tell you this. Anyway, you see there that W. Asa Hutchinson III was the registering agent there. It's attorney Asa's son there, Titan Consulting. And then if you look further into these documents here, you'll see that, let's see, there was a $5,000 contribution to this company, Titan, from let's see, campaign funds of some kind. Is it that it wasn't? Was it Conservative Arkansas, or was it somebody close to this political action committee that claims to be conservative, but not really conservative at all? But they're Conservative Arkansas, this political action committee, and John Woods, the people behind they were very, very close, very, very tight-knit. And, of course, now he is, being charged with 15 counts of wire fraud and everything else. And if you're just joining us and you missed the first half hour of the program, you need to get it because we detailed this new story. $4.7 million, a $4.7 million bid was discovered where John Woods, yesterday in court, it was discovered through emails that John Woods tried to get $4.7 million in Arkansas Economic Development Funds to go to a thermostat company, Pro One, that was owned by Tom and Bontia Goss, who were of Preferred Family Health Care. And that really just connects all these scams together at this point with Rusty Cranford and AmeriWorks and the alleged kickback scheme that took place there as well. I mean, at some point we're going to quit saying alleged, right? Anyway, we have got to take a break. We've got one more hour coming your way next.
talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
They've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
And at some point you have to pay the bills, and that's the day of, we just, it's like we've got to get our fiscal house in order. Now, the discretionary spending versus non-discretionary. I mean, we've talked about this before, Congressman Westerman. I mean, this is the non-discretionary spending, the basically the stuff that you've got to, you don't have an option. I mean, that's what really needs reform, right? I mean, because that's so much of the money that they get every year.
That's closing in on 3/4 of everything that the federal government spends, and it's Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, about 80+ social welfare programs, and interest on the debt. Those 5 things make up 3/4 of everything the federal government spends. Now, that omnibus bill a few weeks ago, that was for the most part discretionary spending. So we jacked the deficit up by $1 trillion on the discretionary side, but the non-discretionary or the mandatory is what's definitely driving the deficit, and it's growing at astronomical rates, and that's part of it. You got all these baby boomers that are retiring that are using Medicare and Social Security at a higher rate than it's been funded at, and then you've got Medicaid, which is an endless pit. And you got all these social welfare programs, and then you got interest on the debt. That it is what it is. And you think when you're $21 trillion in debt, every percentage point that the interest rates go up, that's another $210 billion of payment on interest on the debt. So, if we were to see interest rates go up 3 or 4 points, and I remember when I was a kid, interest rates were 10 to 20%. We would go bankrupt we would wreck our economy in a major hurry if we saw 10 to 15% interest rate.
Yeah, it'd be overnight. I mean, I think it would be one day, and then you wake up the next day, and it's just kind of, chaos for sure. Well, so let me ask you this: we're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman. The Speaker, Paul Ryan, says he's ending and winding down his service. How was that taken? I understand there was you guys caucus, and that's when he announced, and then the press got wind of it maybe a little early. But I mean, what are your thoughts on Speaker Paul Ryan and his exit coming up soon?
Well, I wish him well. He says he wants to spend more time with his family. I can certainly understand that, and I think until you've been around someone that's in that position and you see the amount of time and effort that it takes. I mean, since the day he's been elected Speaker, my observation is he's been like a jet rocket with the afterburners on. I mean, just going as hard as he can go all the time. And it's a job that wears on you. He's the one that's having to negotiate with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, and he's the one that led the House to get all 12 appropriation bills passed, but then got jammed because of the what was happening over in the Senate. And I was walking with Trey Gowdy the other morning, and he's retiring too. I was asking him, Trey, what are you going to do when you get out of office? And he was telling me about his plans to maybe teach at a college and go back and practice law. And he asked me if I saw what he had written about Paul Ryan's retirement. I said, no, I didn't see it. And he said, well, the last line said something that if you don't like the job that Paul did and you think he's a bad person, he said there's no restriction for anybody in this country to serve as Speaker of the House, so you ought to just get in line and put your name in the hat. And the point he was making is that that job is naturally going to take a lot of flack from both your friends and your enemies. And I can't help but respect the job that Paul did. I didn't agree with everything, but I've seen it from a position that not a lot of other people have seen.
Yeah.
How difficult that job is.
Well, and they were talking about what his legacy is, and kind of this goes back to the spending. I mean, the tax cuts are great. I know everybody's proud of that, and people have more money.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, Patriots out there. Thanks so much for being with us today. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine, and we want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is to call or text 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. I believe today, where is Republican gubernatorial candidate Jan Morgan today? Because she has events all over the state constantly. But today is April 25th, and I'm told that she will be in Jonesboro today at the Elks Lodge at 6 o'clock, 6 to 7:30. And it's a meet and greet. Is that what it is? You're invited to join us for a meet and greet dinner at the Elks Lodge with keynote speaker Jan Morgan. So you can assume that Governor Hutchinson will be by the Elks Club sometime next week. Probably not. I think this is just the venue. This is just at the Elks Club, if you will, not an actual sanctioned thing. All right, so I wanted to highlight a few things because there's some primaries going on. This hour I wanted to kind of get into two primaries because there's been a few debates. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about it. The first one I want to highlight is, first of all, the number one, the person who got the number one score out of the House of Representatives on the Conduit for Commerce scorecard was State Representative Dan Sullivan. And that scorecard was a great scorecard. The bills that were scored had to do with good, sound economic policy. It had to do with transparency. It had to do with small business. It had to do with voting against tax increases and not for bigger government and things like that, okay? And it was really good, and there was a ton of bills. And you can go to conduitforcommerce.org, and you can check it out. There's some really, really tough votes where people had to get the right information because, information is king down there, and the talking points that come from the establishment down are very confusing, and they are carefully crafted, and they do confuse a lot of people. Well, State Representative Dan Sullivan was one of those in his vote, and he voted against the bad tort reform bill, by the way, which was really good. Now, so he's number one on the list there out of the House, and of course, because he has such a conservative voting record, he has fielded a primary opponent from essentially healthcare-backed interests. His primary opponent is a doctor by the name of Cole Peck. And last Saturday, they met in, Lake City, which, by the way, that in and of itself is a big deal because there was a movement by Senator John Cooper and others to try to do away with Lake City as a county seat. There are two county seats in Craighead, Jonesboro, and Lake City. They tried to do away with the courthouse there at Lake City, which is convenient for a lot of people. So that was a big deal. That bill was actually fought off. And we talked last week on Friday just a little bit about how there's a brewing there actually in Craighead County, and just like in Washington County, or used to be in Washington County. I know Washington County is pretty conservative Republican committee there, and there have been battles in the past trying to wrestle control away from people who believe in a limited government and things like that, and it drives them nuts. But same thing has happened in Craighead County. There are true conservatives that are running Craighead County. They believe in what the Republican Party platform stands for, and that has made Republican John Cooper very upset. And we talked on Friday about how John Cooper is now harassing members of the committee, and there's going to be more to come out on that, I suspect. But just anyway, that's the balance right now. Everywhere you look in Arkansas, there seems to be a divide, and that's what these primaries are about. They're about really accentuating the division. Primaries are a good thing. I just think it's very evident when you have one of the most conservative legislators, and this happened when the governor the primaried Josh Miller 2 years ago and lost. So we have the same situation here with State Representative Dan Sullivan, and he's being primaried by medical health care interests. Dan Sullivan is against Arkansas Works Medicaid expansion Obamacare. He is for the plan to ratchet it back by capping enrollment, ending enrollment in the current plan. Also, you could transfer it into traditional Medicaid, still with a 70-30 match, and it would be ridiculously cheaper than paying insurance companies billions and billions of dollars so that they can go and put our pharmacies out of business. This program where you have taxpayer dollars going to work against local communities is absolutely just the beginning of socialized medicine. So there was a debate between Cole Peck and Dan Sullivan, and I haven't heard much from Cole Peck. I don't have his contact information, so I have called his clinic, and I have tried to get him on the program. He doesn't want to come on. I would love to come on and have a debate about really where he stands. The reason Dan Sullivan has this opponent is because he is against everything the Marble Palace is for. And that's the way I look at this. And I'm open. I'd be open to just talk about it. And so this is from the debate. Listen to this. The first voice you're going to hear is Cole Peck on Arkansas Works. You're going to have to listen carefully here. Listen to what he says.
In Medicaid, the rules and regulations from Obamacare are forcing hospitals to have to close down. These smaller hospitals, margins are like 2 to 3%, are having to shut down. And you're seeing nurses, you're seeing techs, you're seeing communities struggle when their hospital closes down. And that's not right. So, again, healthcare is an issue. And the issue is that it costs too much, and it costs too much for everyone. And we have to bring it down. Otherwise, again, the government is going to take it over, and their goal is to go to a single payer, and that's not good for anybody in this room.
So that's Cole Peck. What he is saying here is that the government hasn't already taken over health care. It's really strange. He's in healthcare. He should know this. I think most doctors in healthcare know. If you're a conservative at all politically, you know that your industry has been completely destroyed by the government already. And to support Arkansas Works because you buy the Hillary Clinton argument, and yes, it is the Hillary Clinton argument. We have the audio of her saying the exact same thing about hospitals, that you have to support Obamacare to keep your hospitals open, is no longer a viable argument because their dish payments have not ended like they were supposed to under Obamacare. They never did, and we supposedly expanded that because those payments from the federal government were going away. They have never gone away, so his argument is factually misleading. To suggest that support of Arkansas Works is going to save us from a single-payer system is also incorrect, because support of Arkansas Works is perpetuating a single-payer system, and it's healthcare bureaucrats who are in the system now who are going to be well taken care of. Your insurance companies, they are not private anymore. You can't tell where the insurance companies end and the big government begins. And eventually, if we go towards socialized medicine, these insurance companies and these higher-ups, these hospital executives, will actually be absorbed into the state. They will be taken care of. They will be giving large salaries, and the rest of us will suffer with poorer quality health care and higher costs, and it'll all be done in the name of we're trying to take care of everybody. And folks, socialized medicine is pretty much here. Obamacare unraveled it. We do need to get rid of it, and getting rid of the individual mandate is a huge start. But the idea that you're going to support, first of all, it's a socialist program, number one. Number two, it's from a socialist president, and if you support it, they have to come up with these weird arguments. They got hospital math that's inaccurate hospital math, how they calculate their losses. I mean, we can go on forever. But just to be clear, it's no wonder that Cole Peck supports Arkansas Works. I'm glad we at least have a position on it from him. It's no wonder he supports it, because this is why he was recruited to run against Dan Sullivan in the first place. What did Dan Sullivan say? Listen.
Folks, Medicaid expansion is the largest increase and overreach in our state's and our nation's history. Medicaid, so those are the people that say, I'm for a smaller government, I'm for a limited government, and then on the other hand, oppose this. They voted for the largest expansion of government in our nation's history. And while there are things that we can do that reduce costs, for example, most of the money is going to insurance companies. The insurance companies are then taking that money and trying to close your local pharmacies. That was in the paper just not too long ago, the PBMs. And folks, those pharmacists, I'm going straight to the question, those pharmacists support me. They know that I'll fight for them and work for them to reduce those costs. There are the costs that we have and the overruns that we have in healthcare in general. I tried to pass a bill for telehealth to let you call your doctor, let that prescription be given over the phone. The Medical Society killed that bill. Advanced practice nurses, and although there are a few here, I wrote legislation to let advanced practice nurses practice to the full scope of their licensure. In other words, they were trained, they're well qualified, and many other states do it. The Medical Society killed that bill. So if you want access to health care and reduce the cost, we try to, if you sign up for Arkansas Works, you get to pay your health care 90 days prior to that. They reach back 90 days. We finally cut it down to 30 days. Guess who opposed that? Healthcare industry. They oppose doing that. Folks, there are $1.7 billion a year that we're paying the insurance companies. And I'll hopefully get a chance to list the other excesses that we're going through. I don't oppose getting rid of taking things and throw them away today. I realize we have to back down, but it's time to end this program.
Stop. I mean, it's just that on that issue alone, it's just clear and concise. And you have what you have is you have hospitals and insurance companies that are getting rich off of a guaranteed taxpayer-funded program that was an increase of $2 billion a year. That's what this is about, $2 billion or not. We've had this argument many times before, but that's what it is. And, folks, the insurance companies, it is the biggest scam in Arkansas history. These insurance companies are getting rich. They are passing the costs on to you. They are taking the money, making deals with PBMs and trying to put pharmacies out of business. It's only the beginning. And to be a Republican and essentially, I guess we can thank Charlie Collins over in Fayetteville for this. He's a big government Republican and who has made support of Obamacare mainstream in the Arkansas Republican Party. But it's very transparent here. When you pass bills that are going to save money, taxpayer money, and that means less money going into less taxpayer money. So, for example, to allow advanced practice nurses to practice under their full scope of their license like other states do, well, the people say, well, that's going to cost doctors money, so we oppose it, okay? To cut costs and say we're no longer going to allow Arkansas Works people to get 90 days retroactive coverage. Instead, we want it to be 30, and the Medical Society or healthcare interests oppose it. And all of a sudden, Dan Sullivan has an opponent from essentially. Here's the thing. You want to know the truth? St. Bernard's has never gotten over the fact that Paul Bookout had to resign. Now, here's some real truth here, and I'm ruffling a lot of feathers. But they've never gotten – so, see, former Senator Paul Bookout, who had to resign because of campaign expenditure problems and ethics complaints and stuff like that, he was working for St. Bernard's as like a public relations people. It's basically like the James Sturtz, Chad Gallagher thing, but like more overt. And they've never gotten over the fact that Arkansas, when Northeast Arkansas, which was one of the last holdouts to go from being a bunch of Democrats to a bunch of Republicans, and the Northeast Arkansas Republican delegation, aside from John Cooper, is actually pretty solid and pretty conservative. And these big healthcare interests have never gotten over it. They've never gotten over it. And they want their loyal politician back that's more loyal to the taxpayer funded, subsidizing these businesses. And by the way, it's not just your healthcare dollars. You know how many of these organizations, these quote nonprofit hospitals, who in many regards I believe they might have. I just feel like there's some. I feel like some maybe core missions have been forgotten. This is just my personal opinion. But if you ever look at the amount of property tax that they don't pay because there's exemptions there, it's quite staggering as well. And so you get taxpayer money in the form of guaranteed taxpayer-funded streams to your business, and then you get to put out, in many cases, bogus numbers. When you do calculate your losses, you don't calculate your actual losses. You calculate what the insurance company bill would have been, and that goes into your. And we all know that insurance. We all know that like what an aspirin actually costs you is plus 10% or whatever you make a profit on it. It's not what you bill the insurance company. You bill the insurance company for way more than what that aspirin really costs you. And so when you get uncompensated care, you bill the insurance rate and not what it actually cost you. So you guys are not losing the money that you say. Anyway, so that's that primary, and there was a lot of other good stuff that was said in there, and we may get to it a little later in the week. I'm going to cover a Conduit for Action article when we come back, and then at the bottom of this hour, there was another debate across the state in Madison County between State Senator Brian King and State Representative Bob Ballinger. Bob Ballinger's primarying Brian King for his Senate seat right now. We're going to talk about what happened at the end of that debate, or close to the end, because it was interesting. It had to do with the Freedom of Information Act bill that would have gutted Freedom of Information Act by Bart Hester and the amendment that was put on by Bob Ballinger. We'll talk about that and more. Don't go anywhere. Back in a minute.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal.
Ethics.
Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so there's a poll that was released this weekend from Talk Business and Politics in Hendrix College. A poll conducted of 676 GOP voters had Governor Asa Hutchinson in the lead with 57.5% support compared to Jan Morgan's 30.5%. 12% were undecided. Conduit for Action has a breakdown of this over at conduitforaction.org. Good news for Hutchinson. The poll shows a substantial lead with just under a month to go. Bad news for Hutchinson. When Jan Morgan began her campaign earlier this year, she had essentially zero name recognition, yet she has gained substantial momentum in the last 2 months. In January, few knew her name unless they had seen her on Fox Business, where she's been a regular commenter on Second Amendment rights. With Hutchinson's left-leaning record on social issues and a record of government growth and taxation, the governor's best card is to try to keep people from hearing Morgan's message. The Morgan camp wants a debate with Asa, but Asa can't afford to debate. First, a debate would give Morgan more name recognition. Second, a debate would highlight his weak record as a conservative, and Jan Morgan would destroy Governor Hutchinson in a debate, according to, in my opinion. I mean, assuming that you don't just have leftist. I mean, of course, you would have some leftist questions. If it needs to be Lincoln Douglas style, if they do it, that would eliminate the liberal journalist or conservative bias potentially from questions. But, I mean, as far as articulate, I mean, you know, he's debating an investigative journalist. He just would not look very good, especially when it starts coming, you know, when you start bringing up his big government record. I mean, what's he going to say? You know, you increase spending $600 million a year, Governor. What's he going to say? You're a liar. I mean, that's all. I've been a Republican for 30 years, and so I cannot be questioned. That's what he's been saying so far. The Hutchinson camp has been criticized for trying to intimidate county Republican committees into disinviting or not inviting Jan Morgan to speak. Keeping Republican loyalists from hearing her message is his trump card. Recently, there were complaints by residents in the Bono area that the governor called a mayor to find out who paid for a billboard for Morgan. The sign was put up by local Morgan supporters. Asa's inquiry was a way to send a message to Morgan supporters. The governor's taking names. Again, this tactic is needed by Asa to keep down Morgan's name recognition. There may be an opportunity to see the candidates at the same event, though. The Boone County Republican Lincoln Day dinner is April 28th, but don't get the idea the governor will make the mistake of allowing a debate. One would assume he will insist on speaking last so he can make claims without being refuted. And if this doesn't need to happen, because this was an event where Jan Morgan was the only person that was going to be there at all anyway, Jan Morgan should definitely get to speak last. And if Governor Hutchinson doesn't like that, then he should just have a debate so that it would be more fair. The Jan Morgan candidacy has become a grassroots movement. Some Morgan supporters even brag about taking the initiative to get campaign signs printed for themselves and their neighbors. On the other hand, as an incumbent, Asa has a huge campaign war chest, and he will blanket the media with his face and talking points. I'll finish up this article. It's up right now, conduitforaction.org, when we come back.
They've got Conduit News that is on multiple stations across the state. It's pretty much an attack machine on what I'm trying to accomplish in this state, and their message is getting out, and no one else's message is getting through.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
That job is naturally going to take a lot of flack from both your friends and your enemies. And I can't help but respect the job that Paul did. I didn't agree with everything, but I've seen it from a position that not a lot of other people have seen.
Yeah.
How difficult that job is.
Well, and they were talking about what his legacy is, and kind of this goes back to the spending. I mean, the tax cuts are great. I know everybody's proud of that, and people have more money in their paychecks, but I kind of feel like he did want to get spending under control. I mean, that's when he kind of went on the national stage, or was kind of was catapulted that way. I mean, I remember seeing some of the videos about trying to get the deficit and the debt under control, and it's unfortunate that we're still having this conversation because there just doesn't seem to be the political will to do anything about it.
Right, and there's still a strong push to do something about it. Don't think the political will's not there. It's just getting the number of votes that you need, and getting.
Right.
I think getting the electorate to understand how important this debt is, and we've got to get folks in the Senate and in the House that will address this issue, because the issue is not going away. It's not magically going to disappear overnight. So we have to continue working on it.
We got the National Guard, going down to the border. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great move. I think you and I have talked since I made the trip down to the border and saw how the drug cartels are operating on the U.S. side of the border. They've got spotters out in the hills. I've witnessed it firsthand with the Border Patrol closing in on a group of illegals that had crossed the border, and as the 3 Border Patrol vehicles closed in on them, that group split into 2 groups, and we went after the front group, and they split into 3 groups, and it's because there was a spotter up in the mountain monitoring where the Border Patrol was moving, and the amount of drugs that are coming across the southern border are unreal. 192 pounds of fentanyl in 3 months was seized crossing the southern border. That was testimony in the committee that I chair.
Wow.
On oversight.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so Conduit Fraction writes more on this poll, this Talk Business poll. The further bad news for Asa. Even if Asa were to win the Republican nomination, disaffected conservative Republicans may not vote for him in the general, or may even vote for the pro-life libertarian candidate, Mark West. Why might some conservatives be willing to risk a win by a Democrat? Some think the Republican majority in the legislature would accomplish a more conservative agenda if they were fighting a Democrat as governor instead of being undermined by Asa. The question is this: do you think Asa undermines conservatism or supports it? Undermining is a really, really good word there. Does it sound far-fetched that a Republican majority might accomplish a more conservative agenda without Asa? Even if there was a Democrat governor? Does that sound far-fetched? Because in order to override the governor's veto, you only have to have a simple majority vote in each chamber. If it does, then consider what left-wing Democrat Gazette columnist John Brummett told liberals in 2014 when Asa ran for governor against Democrat Mike Ross. Brummett told his readers Asa was posturing for conservatives and would be better for liberals in being able to keep Obamacare Medicaid expansion, then called the private option, then renamed Arkansas Works because the Asa knew that he had to change the name because, conservatives spent a year or two convincing the people of Arkansas that the private option was Obamacare. And it was synonymous. Private option, Obamacare. Private option, Obamacare. Asa comes in, and now we have to convince you that Arkansas Works is Obamacare. He insinuated the Republican legislature would have run roughshod over Ross, but Asa could work within the Republican ranks to advance left-leaning policies. John Brummett was accurate in his prediction. Also note, despite being a left-winger, Brummett continues to be a big defender of Asa. If you want to learn more about the candidates, you see there on the website, conduitforaction.org, you have Asa's website right next to Jan Morgan's. But these websites are just a starting place. Make sure the candidates are being clear about their positions. For example, on fiscal issues, Asa emphasizes tax cuts while not mentioning his tax increases. On social issues, Asa emphasizes his pushback on Obama transgender bathroom guidelines, but does not mention he opposed Arkansas legislation to prohibit men from using the bathroom with women and girls. Check out the claims of both candidates because you won't have the opportunity to hear them debate. Here's what John Brummett said in 2014, quote, Ross is fully committed to working as governor to continue the private option. Hutchinson says he'll do the right thing and that we need, to study the son of a gun closely. Discerning observers know that Hutchinson is simply trying to finesse the issue to keep his right flank from frothing. Discerning observers know he's going to keep the program after putting some conservative-seeming bow on it. As I've written, because it's true, Hutchinson could succeed more easily than Ross in getting a decisive few Republicans to vote for the private option. That lets Hutchinson get away with pandering to the right wing while also giving him implied credit for doing the right and pragmatic thing. Oh well, Democrats have gotten away with such finesse in Arkansas for decades. Isn't it crazy that we have media or journalists, personalities that are just okay with essentially lying to people? No, I'm not talking about the media themselves. What he is saying, obviously the media lies to people. I'm talking about, in this instance, the system of finesse is actually, what he calls finesse is actually being dishonest. And to have somebody who's in the media just be, in a way, we should be upset with that, right? We should be upset with the finesse, with the dishonesty, instead of using the dishonesty to our advantage because it's the policy that we want. So it's okay for Asa to lie to conservatives because you're going to get the left-leaning policy that you want. That's a la Jonathan Gruber. Obamacare was passed because we were able to deceive the American people. It's same thing happened here. I really hope I don't ever become as and I have to some extent. I mean, I used to be very idealistic. I'm still idealistic. I used to be more so than I am now. I mean, doing this for almost 10 years. Next year it'll be 10 years. I have become even less, and I guess maybe you just say, yeah, okay, well, there's no way to change it. I refuse that. I refuse to say, and see, I think you're never going to change the corrupt nature of man, but you can change the government that is used as a vehicle to force other people to do things. And if the government is less powerful, then you blunt the potential of man's depravity on other people by using the government. If it's small and specific and defined what it can do, and you count on the fact that you're going to have men who are going to amass power and going to want to use it in a bad way, in an anti-liberty way, then, it has to be small. Because you're never going to eliminate corruption and deceit, but it needs to be small in what it can do to us by force. I guess that's my goal, and that's why at Conduit, our goal is to measurably reduce the size of government. Joe, did you have something on your mind?
Yeah. Even before I started working here, I was always skeptical of the government, and to some degree, it used to be very small. But I was mostly skeptical of the federal government, like the national government, so D.C. I was never really skeptical of state legislation and state government, because I never thought it would be as bad. And then almost 2 years ago, it'll be 2 years in August, started working here and started learning about state government and how bad and how messed up it is, at least here in Arkansas. And I became immediately very skeptical of almost everything I hear about state government.
Yeah, I know. And we were talking with Michael Quinn Sullivan yesterday from Empower Texans, and one of the points we made was, in many cases, it's so much worse here than it is in D.C. And I know that's hard for people to wrap their brains around, but, folks, our local media doesn't do a good job telling you about the scandals. I mean, if they do, they might mention them here or there, but they're not. They're focused more on, what's going on in their local communities, and that's not necessarily a bad thing in terms of, I don't know, there was a dog show or something. You know what I'm saying? Like that seems to be what you can get from some of these local media outlets.
Well, think about it. You have the media that constantly covers stuff that goes on in D.C., but you also have full-blown networks, like television channels dedicated to live streams of the chambers.
Yeah. Well, no, it's just we
don't have that at state level,
it's just like that Sinclair video where they all read the exact same script, very, very scary, all these local affiliates taking advantage of their relationships that they have, all saying it's a really fake news is a danger to our democracy. Fake news is a danger to our democracy, exposing them as all being frauds and fakes, all being controlled, all being from a centralized. And it's like you said, these local media outlets are parroting really a lot of the same stuff that you hear on the national outlets. If they get time to talk about John Woods, they talk about it for a season, but how many people are just now hearing about John Woods from the, quote, from the statewide local outlets? How many people are just now hearing about it? We've been talking about it on this program for 2 years.
I'm saying something like this would never pick up national headlines.
Yeah, exactly. So they wouldn't funnel down to them. That's the thing. If there's a national story in Arkansas, it goes to CNN, it'll funnel down to the local affiliates. Isn't that backwards?
Yeah.
It's totally backwards. Very rarely do you have the natural progression of a local story that then gets that you get a local story that gets picked up and from local investigative journalism. Okay, you have more quote investigative journalism. Investigative journalism is dead unless you're James O'Keefe. I mean, he's the actual investigative journalist now for this country. But yeah, this is the state of things, and it's really frustrating. So anyway, the media. Here's John Brumman essentially just saying, "Yep, this is just what politicians do." Back in 2020, they deceive the people. Well, let's speak up about it. Let's speak out about it. Let's call it what it is. Let's call it morally wrong for Asa to pander to conservatives, knowing that he's not going to give us what we want. That's exactly what he's doing now, and it's morally wrong. Asa knows he's not ever going to support a bathroom bill, yet he's campaigning on one. I mean, this is stupid. It's stupid. Regardless of what you think of the bathroom issue or whatever, I've had callers before call me that I suspect maybe were transgender or something, and they tell me how wrong I am or whatever, or regardless of how you actually feel about men going into women's restrooms or vice versa. The fact is, Ace is not going to do anything about that. Like, he's not even going to touch it, but he's campaigning like he will now.
Yeah,
it's so stupid.
If for some reason a bill got passed, he would just let it sit on his desk until it became law. He wouldn't do anything about it. He just let it sit there.
I don't know if we have time for this, but let's go. Let's transition over in Madison County last week. Brian King and Bob Ballinger having a debate here in this Republican primary. What's interesting about this is there was talk throughout this entire 2-hour debate, or hour debate. I think there was some other stuff in the beginning. There was a lot of talk in this debate about Bob Ballinger's support for a bill that would have gutted the Freedom of Information Act. And they get to closing statements, and a reporter from the Madison County Record stands up and kind of calls Bob Ballinger out and says that they never supported that bill. They didn't. It wasn't a good thing, trying to correct the record. Then they go into closing statements, and then no, we're gonna start right here. All throughout the debate, because we don't have time to listen to the whole hour or whatever. All throughout the debate, Bob Ballinger's biggest critique of Senator King is they say, well, he doesn't show up to vote. Brian King explains that several times, saying, a lot of times I don't vote because I don't like what's in it, so I don't vote yes or no. They say he doesn't show up. Here's the thing: if he voted no on everything, then the critique would probably be, you vote no on everything. I mean, it would just modify, in my opinion. Brian King explains he's against the big insurance companies, and it goes on and on. But listen to this exchange. Interesting. Somebody in the audience calling Bob Ballinger out. Listen.
Health issues, and we'll go with Mr. King first.
That's a good question, Bill. I've been opposed to Medicaid expansion, but the point we're at right now, how do you roll back and do things? I talked about unsustainable Medicaid spending right now and how it's affecting all of state government and taking care of a lot of things. And I talked about the big insurance companies. When the Republicans expanded Medicaid in Arkansas, they did something far different, and the Democrats. They went with the big insurance companies. So we've given $5 billion to these big insurance companies over the last some years. We can't track these people. Many of these people, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they move in the state, and then they move back out. They turn in 0 claims. Blue Cross Blue Shield still gets $6,000, your tax dollars. Healthcare, absolutely nothing. 2016, we spent $250 million to these big insurance companies for the healthcare of nothing. People turning in 0 claims. This last session, I proposed, not ending the program, moving them to a Medicaid fee-for-service. Easier to track, less expensive, still provides coverage for these people. Okay? Big insurance companies, big Medicaid comes in with these Republicans and Democrats and say, no, we don't want that. No, we don't want that. We're not going to do that. So, once again, we have different issues of expansion, but yet you have proposals. Let me tell you something else, Bill, about compassion. There was a bill down there. We tried to remove the cap. There's a cap on the number of people that can be put into nursing homes or assisted living. If we keep people in assisted living, it's half the cost of the nursing home. If we keep people at home, it's a third of the cost. Guess what? The nursing homes have a cap. They force people into nursing homes instead of having access to real care. The other thing is, we laid off 200 people at UMS. That's a hard part to our healthcare system, our only medical school. Brian King's the only one down there that did anything this last session to try and address that problem and look at spending. We need to cut spending, quit giving all these millions to big insurance companies, and start giving it to UMS. And start giving it to the people out here instead of lining the pockets of these big insurance companies who turn around and take your tax dollars and then on your premiums force you to pay more, work harder for less coverage.
All right.
It's a clear difference. Medicaid is a better service than giving these big insurance companies.
All right, stop. So that's Senator Brian King. I'm sorry, I got my cuts confused in the order, and Joe, you were trying to tell me that I was wanting to start at the wrong place. This is what that's Senator King. That's really, his message. He reiterates it later, but towards the end of the debate, somebody from the Madison County Record says this.
I'm Chris. I'm the owner of the Madison County Record, and I just wanted to thank everyone for being here. And I do just want to set the record straight. The Press Association, I'm a member of the board of directors of the Press Association. We never supported Senate Bill 373, and it truly would have gutted information we could have gotten to you as our reader. So I just want to clarify that. I appreciate the candidates. I appreciate very much your debate and your comments, but the Press Association never did support Bill 373. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go with closing remarks now. Each candidate gets 4 minutes.
then they go to closing remarks, and State Representative Bob Ballinger addresses that critique from the Madison County Record.
I do appreciate you all coming back. I never said the Press Association supported it. What I said is the Press Association didn't oppose it. They didn't mobilize, didn't come up and
we always opposed it, sir. We always did.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that, the question is, why didn't Senator King vote for it, or vote against it at that point then? If that's the case, if he knew better.
So he tries to, Bob here is, what he's trying to say is, and they brought this up earlier in the debate, that Senator King voted against this bill the second time it came from the Senate, or before the Senate. And he didn't vote the first time. A lot of people voted for that bill, Senator Bart Hester's bill, Bob Ballinger's amendment. A lot of people voted for it the first time because they didn't know what it was, and they were just trusting their colleagues to say, oh, this is good for the Freedom of Information Act. But by the time it got out of the Senate and then went to the House committee and then was amended, in a lot of ways, thanks to Conduit for Action for writing this story, exposing what this was and how it would have gutted freedom of information. You hear the Press Association president say it would have gutted freedom of information. By the time it got back to the Senate, it was killed, and it wasn't brought back up again, thank goodness. So State Representative Ballinger here trying, and I feel like it's just a little contrived to say the real question is, why didn't Senator King vote against it the first time? First of all, nobody really knew what the bill was because things moved so fast, and this was an attempt, this was legislative sleight of hand in the first place. That's the whole reason it got through the Senate. I mean, it was moving fast. Nobody would thought, okay, here's the thing. People trust Republicans, and they don't think that Republicans stand against transparency. And that bill was against transparency. The amendment was still against transparency. It would have allowed an attorney it would have allowed a university, a government agency, to share anything they wanted to with an attorney and keep it secret forever. Because, no, I mean, they'd be able to share it after the time passed for where they were liable or could be sued. Well, that could be forever. You could always be sued. You can be sued for anything. So it would allow the government to hold on to these documents forever based on the fact that they shared it with an attorney. So, no, it was ridiculous. It would have impeded us getting the information that we're entitled to. We have the best Freedom of Information Act in the country, and leave it to Republicans to try to gut it and screw it up. Anyway, there's actually way more to that video. We're out of time, though. We got to go to break, but maybe we'll have time later in the week. We'll get to some more of that Colpeck as well. Okay. And by the way, I got to say something else. If you don't vote on something, then you're voting against it. If you don't vote on something, it's essentially a no vote because you have to have a certain amount of votes to get it out of the chamber. Now, people are upset with that. People are mad about that. Or they get mad about that. I'm not one of these people that gets mad about it, unless you're in a committee, then yeah, okay. But this is ridiculous. And if you actually look at Brian King's voting record, it is very strong. What he supports and what he doesn't support is right in line with trying to stop big government and trying to stand up to a governor that is undermining conservatism and watching out for your tax dollars. We got to take a break. Back in a minute.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with the Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, I'm crafting a tweet. So look for it. Look for the tweet on your Arkansas AR leg feed, ARPX. It's really simple. It's just I have a dream that one day I can go back to making parodies about Democrats. One can only dream. So. Maybe. What'd you say? These are what dreams are made of one day. You know, it's really sad, though, because it's essentially, it's the low-hanging fruit stuff. It's fun. I like to do satire, and we like to put these things out there. And it's just really sad that we have to use satire and absurdity to expose and illustrate the absurd. And you have to do it in the Republican Party. It's easy to do it with Democrats, but with Republicans, because they claim to be a sheep when they're really a wolf. It's hard. I mean, it's so much easier to convince in Arkansas that Democrats were wrong and Republicans were right. It's so easy, easiest thing in the world compared to having to convince people that this Republican's bad and this Republican's good. This Republican's now lying to you based on what they've done, based on their record, and throwing their record up at them. The part of the liberty machine that we're building here is a mirror. It's an integral part of the liberty machine, and it's a mirror, and it's for the politician. We show them who they really are. The fact is, and maybe some of you guys won't get this literary reference, but a lot of these politicians are Dorian Grays. They really are. They're Dorian Grays. And we have that mirror, and they look into it, and they can't stand to hear their own record talked about. They recoil at it. It's their little secret. No, that's not who I claim to be. I'm a conservative. I run as a conservative. Yeah, well, look into the mirror of that Liberty machine. Yeah, that is who you are. That is who you are. And you said that you were someone else to the people, but this is who you really are. This is your record. And just quit listening to the special interests and just do the things that you say that you're for. And now, if you're not for those things, don't say that you're for those things. Be honest and tell the people who... Now, you may lose power if you tell the people who you really are, but boy, that'd be... I feel like you'd be able to respect yourself more. And you know what? That's just a life lesson in general. Confession's good for the soul, bad for the reputation. Not just in politics, but in everything. Okay, we're going to see you tomorrow. Arkansas, be safe.